Hello, welcome to today's Insta Live, and today we're going to talk about a very important topic. We're going to talk about understanding AMH test. For all of those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea Trigo. I am a fertility nurse consultant, and I spend my time helping women and couples improving their health for fertility. So today, I want to tell you a bit about AMH test because it's a very important test that you might have to do if you are trying for a baby. Some of you might have had this test already and you're wondering, what does it mean? Can I have a false result, or can I even improve the result of my AMH test? Or what does really a high value mean or a low value mean? So today, we're going to answer all these questions about AMH test. So I would like to start by telling you a bit about AMH test and what it is. Well, AMH is a fluid that exists in the follicles, and the follicles, we have hundreds of follicles in our ovaries. The follicles have the eggs inside and they start growing and developing in each cycle. So AMH is produced by the pre-antral and the antral follicles in our ovaries as the eggs mature and grow. We know that the values of AMH are stable throughout the cycle, so it's a test that you can do at any point of the cycle. It's measured in your blood, so it's a fairly easy test to do, and it will give you an indication about the quantity of eggs that you have in your ovaries. So it's usually used as an indicator of your egg reserve. So I'm going to share with you some of the values that you might see. So here in this table, you will see that, as I was saying, the values of AMH will change with age. And if you're younger, you will have higher value of AMH. And that's because it's inside the follicle, the follicular fluid. So the more eggs we have when we're younger, then the bigger the value of AMH. And then as we grow older, this value will start reducing. You will see, as you can see here in this graph, the values of AMH can be presented by the laboratory in different formats. So you need to see which laboratory you're using. Depending where you are in the world, it can be presented in nanograms per milliliter or pmols per liter. So when you have your results in front of you, just make sure you see what is the concentration in the units that are being presented. If it's, for example, nanograms per milliliter and you have a 5, but you're 25 years old, that's a good amount of normal amount of AMH. However, if your result is presented in pmol per liter and you're 25 years old, you're expecting a value around 28. So it's very important to know the units in which your results are being presented. Now, you may have noticed that your values are either higher or lower than these normal values that I'm presenting to you today. So I would like to tell you a bit about that might be the case. So I have here some possible reasons of why your values might be higher or lower than normal. Just need to charge my phone as well as I talk to you. So low values of AMH can be, the most common reason will be a low ovarian reserve. So that means that the number of eggs that you have in your follicles, in your ovaries, is reducing, so that would be an indication. We have here a question: if you have cancer, fertility treatment that highly is likely to render you infertile, what number means it's impossible to have a miracle baby scientifically? Well, that's a great question. So we only need one egg to have a baby, right? So I'm going to talk a bit about the research and what does it mean. Does the AMH test really indicate that you will have, if you have a normal AMH, that you will have a live birth or not, and I will come back to that in a few minutes, so hang around. But if you have a low AMH, it could be that your ovarian reserve is low. It could be that you have a condition called premature ovarian failure or insufficiency, where the ovaries are not producing or not having a good amount of eggs for your age. Some women with endometriosis or lupus also have low AMH values, Crohn's disease or autoimmune thyroid disease. So all of these conditions can give you a low AMH value. Now, in terms of irregular values, let's say you have a number this month and then in a second cycle, it should be stabilized. You should always have around the same value. It shouldn't change dramatically. So if it does, it could be that you're reaching menopause. And then we have some women who have high values than normal. And it could be either PCOS, which is quite common, or it could be endometriosis as well. So is it a good indicator of ovarian reserve? That is one of the most common questions I am asked. And usually AMH is considered the best test of ovarian reserve that tells you if you have a good quantity of eggs in your ovaries. So high values are associated with more follicles. So you would usually have more eggs if you're trying to conceive, or if you're going through IVF and you were to receive ovarian stimulation, you would produce more eggs. So that is a good indicator of the amount of follicles and the amount of eggs that you get. And AMH also reliably predicts IVF response. So if you're going through IVF, high values are also associated with high number of eggs retrieved, but also with a high risk of OHSS. So that's why a lot of women who have PCOS and have high AMH values are also at high risk of OHSS. So in those situations, we need to reduce the amount of drugs that we are giving as ovarian stimulation. And so it's a good indicator of ovarian reserve, a good indicator of IVF result in terms of how many eggs it can be collected, and it's a good indicator of menopause as well. But the question here is it a good indicator of quality as well as quantity? And the question is no, it just gives an indication of quantity. So it's a good indicator of measure of ovarian response in IVF, of how many eggs you're likely to have, but it's a poor predictor of take a baby home. So women who have normal AMH values or low AMH values who end up taking a baby home is sort of the same number. So it doesn't mean that if you have a lower number, but if you can get one egg, that egg can be of good quality and you can take a baby home. So I'm not sure if that answered the question we had earlier. So if you go through cancer treatment and you've had some reduction in your ovarian reserve and your AMH is low, but you still have some eggs, those eggs can be of good quality and you can get pregnant with those eggs, which is really good news. So it's good to know that at least you have quality. You may not have a lot of eggs, but you have some eggs and you can affect the quality of those eggs, and there's a lot of things that we can do to improve the quality of those eggs. Now, a second thing that I would like to tell you is something that a lot of people don't know, and I think it's super important to know, which is how accurate are the results, or if we can get a false result when we do an AMH test. And there's actually a lot of evidence saying that there are some false results out there. And it's something so simple that you wouldn't think would be a problem these days, but let me tell you about it. So what happens is you go to the laboratory where you have your blood drawn to test your AMH. And let's say that the AMH is not tested there at the clinic in their laboratory, and it needs to be sent out to another lab to be analyzed. So the amount of time that the blood sample is left there in the counter, and how long it takes to be transported and actually be analyzed, and the conditions of that transport can affect the result. So this is quite important. So when you are having an AMH test, it's important to understand who is analyzing your sample. Is it being analyzed where the blood is being collected? In which conditions is it being transferred somewhere else? So if you have, for example, one result today and then another result in a few weeks' time or in a month's time, and they are completely different, don't assume immediately that you are in that irregular stage of reaching menopause. It's very likely that there has been a result that was a false result as a consequence of not being the sample not being managed properly after collection and after transportation. This is very frequent, and there is a lot of research on it as well. So just be mindful to investigate where you are having your test done and to make sure that it's a reliable place. And once you find a reliable place, it's good to always have it in the same place, because you can compare from what you have now to what you had 6 months ago. So it's good to have that indication. Now, what can affect AMH levels? It's quite a common question, and there's a few things that I have noted here that can affect AMH levels. One of them seems to be chronic stress, seems to affect the amount of AMH. Hormonal disorders as well. Of course, if you have any history of ovarian disorders, also seems to affect your AMH levels. An unhealthy diet, high in saturated fats, also seems to worsen AMH. Vitamin deficiency, particularly vitamin D, seems to affect AMH levels. PCOS, which increases AMH, and caffeine, smoking, and exposure to pesticides also seems to affect AMH. So there's a lot of things that seem to affect AMH apart from mishandling. There's a lot of things that could affect the quantity of the eggs that you have. So it's good to be able to make a lot of changes in your environment to make sure you are eating healthy, to make sure that you are doing moderate physical exercise, at least 30 minutes a day, that you're reducing your exposure to certain chemicals, and overall leading a healthy life to make sure that you are having the best possible eggs in terms of quantity as well as quality when you are trying to conceive. And I'm not sure if there are any questions. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. If you have any questions, all you need to do is write down in comments or send me a private message. If you want me to look at your AMH results, I'm more than happy to do that. And this presentation has been sponsored by our upcoming app, which is launching in November. And this is the app with evidence-based information to help you improve your fertility. So if you want to know more about it, all you need to do is go through the link in bio and you will receive my newsletter giving you early access. The app is absolutely free, so it comes from my heart wanting to give to this community all the information that you should have to make empowered decisions about your fertility health. This should be easily available to you, and that's what I've been doing over the last 6 months, was reviewing all sorts of research to make it available to you in simple terms that you can understand. So you'll learn a lot about AMH and so many other things when you're trying to conceive, from understanding your fertility to treatment options to nutrition and hydration, physical activity, habits, environmental factors, and managing emotions as well. So you'll have access to the online course, support groups, mindfulness recordings, all sorts of cool stuff. So if you think this might be for you, and it's absolutely free, and you want to have early access before everyone else in November, all you need to do is go through the link in bio and you will receive an email just explaining everything to you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and looking forward to seeing you shortly.